You know, down in a small town in Baja California, sir, something pretty incredible is happening. The community of Agua Amarga is quietly putting together a blueprint for survival, for prosperity. And they're not looking for some big company to come in and save them. No, they're digging deep into their own past to build a future that's truly resilient.
So let's dive right in. The town is really at a crossroads, facing this really stark choice. On one side, you've got the typical external development model, mega projects that bring in things like satellite surveillance and real estate speculation, which can just drain the local resources dry. But on the other side, a totally different path, one that's led by the community itself, focused on guardianship, on regenerating their resources, and on strengthening their own cultural identity. It's really a classic showdown between two completely different visions of what the future could be.
And this really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. When you're up against these huge pressures, how does a tiny community of just 600 people manage to push back and actually forge its own destiny? Well, the answer is this fascinating mix of ancient wisdom and some very clever modern ideas. Okay, let's start by really getting a handle on what's at stake here. We're talking about Agua Amarga, the small community nestled right between Punta Arenas and Ensenada de Muertos. They are literally fighting to protect a way of life that has been around for generations. Now, here's what's so interesting. Look at how they're redefining the whole idea of security. See, for the folks here, security isn't about more cameras or gates. It's about social security. That fundamental right to access the sea, to dock their boats exactly where their ancestors did without getting walled off by some new luxury resort. So to solve today's problems, the community is looking backwards. And what's amazing is that the blueprint for their resilient future, it's surprisingly found in the brilliant engineering of the Jesuit missions that were built right here, centuries ago. And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. Think about it. The mission era folks used local volcanic rock and lime to build these incredible stone aqueducts and dams that are still working 300 years later. So what's the modern version? It's decentralized, off-grid solar power and these special rock dams called gabions that help recharge the aquifer. See the connection? Both are built to last and both are controlled by the community. It's brilliant.
Okay, so that's the big idea. But how are they actually doing it? Well, this next part gets into the really cool hands-on techniques that Agua Amarga is using to literally transform its environment from the ground up. So the very first step was a waste audit done by a group called the Alianza Cero Basura, the Zero Waste Alliance. And what they found was a total game changer. It turns out that 60% of what everyone thought was trash going into the dump wasn't trash at all. It was organic matter, an incredibly valuable resource for creating new, rich soil. And that discovery leads them right to techniques like Terra Preta de Indio. This is an ancient Amazonian method for making this incredible super soil using something called biochar. Biochar is basically just charcoal, but made in a special low-oxygen environment. The key thing to remember is that it creates permanent fertility. Here's a wild way to think about it. Biochar is like a luxury high-rise for microbes. A single gram, 1 gram, has the internal surface area of 2 basketball courts. It gives all the good stuff in the soil a permanent home. Then there's another powerful tool called hugelkultur. Now, I know it sounds super complex, but it's basically just building a garden bed on top of rotting wood. You lay down a base of old logs, then layer on branches, green stuff like leaves, and compost. That wood at the bottom acts like a giant sponge, soaking up rainwater and then releasing it super slowly. What you get is a raised garden that's almost self-watering. So cool.
But look, all these brilliant techniques and technologies, they're only half the puzzle. The real transformation, the magic, happens when you start building human capital, when the people themselves shift their identity from being takers of resources to becoming their protectors. I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? This paradigm shift is everything. You take the fishermen of Agua Amarga, these guys were once known as the best shark fishermen in the entire region. But now, they're using their decades of incredible ecological knowledge not to take from the sea, but to lead scientific tourism trips. Their wisdom becomes this amazing asset for conservation. And this isn't just a happy accident. They are deliberately wiring the shift into the community, especially through a new way of thinking about education. The national school curriculum is actually being used to solve local problems. Arts, music, folkloric dance, they're all used as a form of activism to build up cultural pride.
And you have groups like Ecology Project International helping to raise an entire new generation of stewards who will protect the Sea of Cortez.
Okay, this all sounds amazing, right? But I know what you're thinking. How do they pay for all of this? I mean, none of it works if it isn't financially viable. So, how does this whole regenerative model actually pay the bills? Well, it does it by building what they call a protective economy. One of the key financial tools here is something called THERA, which is Mexico's trust fund for rural development. The easiest way to think about it is like having a cosigner on a loan. FIRA provides these partial credit guarantees, which basically tells private banks, hey, we've got their back, and that reduces the risk for the banks. And this creates an incredible 1-to-5 leverage. For every single peso FIRA guarantees, it unlocks 5 pesos of private credit for these small, sustainable projects. It's a huge multiplier. And get this, the social returns are just as impressive, if not more so. In these projects, 42% of all the leadership positions are held by women. That number absolutely blows the national rural average of 24% right out of the water. It just goes to show you that this model is a powerful, powerful engine for social inclusion. So, what's the bottom line? Does it actually work? Oh, yeah, it works. The producers who have adopted these sustainable, regenerative practices have seen their sales increase by a stunning 27%. This isn't just some nice theory, it's a proven economic success story. And all of this, everything we've talked about, it all comes down to this one really powerful idea. La modernidad en Agua Amarga no se compra, se construye desde la raíz. Modernity in Agua Amarga isn't bought, it's built from the root. This is the ultimate insight, right? That true, lasting progress isn't something you import. It's homegrown, grounded in cultural identity, in local knowledge, and in the land itself. So that leaves us with one last big question to think about. As small communities all over the world are facing the pressures of climate change and speculative development, could the story of Agua Amarga be more than just one local success? Could this be the blueprint for the future of rural resilience everywhere?